Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Story Darlings podcast. I'm Sandra.
And I'm Tera.
What are we talking about today, Tera?
We are talking about Crescent City Book 1, which is House of Earth and Blood. Ew.
Well, now we're in Crescent City. For those of us just joining us, we have gone through the entire Throne of Glass series, the entire A Court of Thorns and Roses, also known as ACOTAR series. And so we're just diving right into all of the Sarah J Maas books. And now we are finally in Crescent City. And we're getting to a point now where Tera has almost officially caught up with me and all of my reading with Sarah J Maas's books. So we're nearing the finish line.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. We're going to be reading Crescent City 3 together. So I won't be like behind and trying not to catch any spoilers from you.
Yeah. It's been the hardest trying not to spoil anything. And I know I've already spoiled stuff by like accidentally sending stuff. And it's so easy to go down rabbit holes too.
Yeah. Like I did not know in ACOTAR that something happened to the three sisters until Sandra let it slip.
Sorry.
A TikTok that she sent me.
Yeah.
I'm going to dive into this book because it's the same as what happened with that TikTok. I enjoy like all the little like crime solving and like the detective work that went into this. And that is how Sandra spoiled it for me, because there was like one little part of the TikTok that she sent me for ACOTAR that gave it away what happened to the three sisters. And I found that very quickly. So it wasn't necessarily Sandra's fault. It was just a very teeny tiny part of that TikTok that I found. But I do enjoy this book for that. However, I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room. And if you have not read through chapter 5, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Horribly sorry, because after chapter 5, I had a little bit of I had to take some time. I had to take some time away from the book.
Yeah.
To regroup and then go back into the book.
I was the same exact way. And it was really interesting being a third time, I guess, reading this book this time around. But having both you and my sister text me right after the first part of the book, I was the same exact way. After reading chapter 5 the first time, I like put the book down and I was in shock. I was just like, did that really just happen? Because Sarah J Maas spends all of this time, describing how Bryce's day-to-day is, working at the gallery, her best friend Danika, this potential love interest, named Connor, this douchebag that she's been dating, Reed, and just like getting acquainted with the entire pack of devils. And you just learn to care just enough that the end of chapter 5 is just so horrible.
Gut-wrenching.
Mm-hmm. And then the book fast forwards 22 months later and it picks back up. But let's talk about the first 5 chapters, like what goes on. So we're introduced to a number of characters, as well as Bryce's very mysterious boss, Jessica Roga.
And her equally as mysterious family line.
Yes.
But Jessica, I don't know what to think of her, because I think I like her a lot. But I'm wary of liking her a lot, because she is very snarky. She is very feisty. She is very much her own person. But then there's all these threats of, I'll turn you into this animal, which I don't know that she would ever do. But that's where I'm scared, because what if she really would? And what if she turns out to be the bad guy? And I don't like that.
She strikes me as kind of an Amryn character, right? Mm-hmm. So she's very, very catty, and there are different funny scenes between different characters when they talk about the bottom level of the gallery, how there's all these penned animals and stuff. And so it's like that question of, did she or didn't she? We better not risk it and piss her off just in case.
But then she does other super, that they were sweet thing that she was doing. But she hides it behind her own getting something out of it, selling shrinks, or however you say his name, shrinks. I don't know.
Syrinx.
Syrinx. Okay. Selling him to Bryce instead of selling him to somebody that's going to torture him. Like, and she she set up this like payment plan for it too. So it's not even like she made her money off of it. She's taking a little bit out of each paycheck. So she did this out of the goodness of her heart, but she has to like hide it behind I'm getting something out of this, which is
Yeah. The wage garnishment.
she can't lose her like mean boss vibe or mean boss like
Yeah, she has a reputation, right? And like
yes.
everyone best, remember that. Um,
Yeah.
Lehabah is the other little fire sprite character that hangs out and lives in the gallery.
I love her. I love her. I love her. I love her. She's just like good for a good laugh. And like her relationship to Hunt, who we also meet, is so fantastic because as Bryce puts it, like I'm not really sure how that's gonna work. The size difference.
Oh, so first, I loved your text message because you're like, I just love the horny fire sprite. She's so funny. And she calls Bryce BB and she calls Hunt Athalar Athie. And then she lives in a literal dollhouse. So every time it describes what Lehabah is doing, she's like reclining on this like little toy couch and stuff and watching her shows that they make fun of her, like, oh, fangs and bangs again. Huh? She's like, it's not called that. It's
Well,
so
in the
cute.
dollhouse was given to her by Bryce, which is even cuter. Like Bryce brought her little childhood dollhouse. And she's really good friends with Syrinx. And she says he talks to her. Actually,
Mhm.
nobody else knows if he actually does, or she's just like making it up. Um,
But also, like, she's such a likable, lovable character, but then you realize she's also a slave too. Like, there's some
mhm.
context about these lowers, like the little sprites and tiny fae and stuff that were kicked out of the house of Sky and Breath.
They were kicked out because they sided with the rebellion angels, though, which was Hunt. And
Mm.
so this is again her affinity for Hunt, which is hilarious for me. Um, because her like great grandmother or whatever fought with him during this rebellion. And so she's like, so he's like mine. Like I can call him whatever I want because he's mine.
Bryce is like, okay, Lehabah, you can't even wrap your arms around his cock. So she's just like,
Yes.
oh my God. She's mortified. But it's so funny because she's just always lurking, right? She's like always
Uh-huh.
listening at the door and chiming in and when she should be minding her own business and stuff.
Or minding the books, which is her
Yes.
job, is like
Mhm.
she's the fire sprite. And these books that are in this library are like have a mind of their own. Like they try and escape, which also like cracks me up when the books are like thumping out of their bookshelf, trying to like get away from this library and go
Yes.
back into the real world. And she's like, bad. And because she's like this little fire sprite, they're afraid of her because she can burn them, right? That's how I imagine her saying that. Bad.
Bad. No. She's so sassy and cute. Our little Lily. Then there's Danica. What do you think of Bryce's BFF?
Oh, I loved Danica. And I say that in past tense because if you're not to chapter 5, Danica doesn't last long in this book. I loved her. I thought that their relationship together was much like me and you, especially in our college days. Like that was maybe what we were like a little bit.
We're a little feisty. Yeah.
Mhm.
Like put one and one and together and it's just you have fun, get a little
Mhm.
wild and crazy. I love their friendship so much. And Danica, her relationship with her mom Sabine is not good. It's very rivalry, right? And
Mhm.
so the world building for this book is so interesting because they have to make a something called the drop, which is when they
Mhm.
get their immortal years, like they earn that length of time, however long it is. And there's a lot of talk about that whole process, how your magic goes out into the world, right? Into these ley
Mhm.
line type of things. So there's just a lot of like weird little world building nuances.
And that reminded me of like Tamlin, like that yearly thing that he had to do
Callan
because his
my,
magic had to
yeah.
like go out into the world and power the world for the rest of the time or whatever until he did it again. So now, like, as opposed to one person having to do that, everybody's doing it just a little bit. Mhm.
And you learn that there's something called Fey lights and stuff, which
Mhm.
is basically like electricity. It's how they power up their cell phones. It's a very modern urban society, which is so cool because everything that we've been reading has been, a medieval kind of setting. And so now we're in this modern type, like this modern time where there's cars and there's phones and there's appliances and all kinds of stuff and everything feeding into the power. Like the Fey, or I guess the greater group of them are called Vanir or something,
Mhm.
and so that stuff is what powers everything, so that's interesting.
We also see that Sabine and her mom have a little bit more of rivalry because not Sabine and her mom, Danica and her mom, Sabine, because the grandpa clearly likes Danica better, along with everybody else in the world, because Sabine is a bitch, right? And so he is thinking about just skipping over Sabine completely. And then also we see that Danica has a shit ton of power, like a lot more than her mom. And once she makes the drop, she is supposed to be one of the most powerful, like, veneers ever. And so her mom hates her for that too.
Yeah, her mom has been looking for the sword that,
Hmm.
bypassed her and went to Danica, that Danica is carrying around. It's another really cool thing about the dynamic between Danica and Bryce is like Bryce's best friend is essentially like the celebrity of Crescent City or Lunathion. And it's like everyone knows who Danica is. It's like they want to take pictures of her, like they respect her, they keep their distance. There was that one scene where in the beginning of the book where they were walking through and they went to the gate where there's like
Hmm.
tourists basically visiting the big city and they have to like the whole thing is like making a wish and it gets heard like someplace else, but you have to like give up a drop of your power for the wish to come true. And they're like bypassing the line and everyone can recognize Danica. And then they also hear like these absurd wishes from all of these like children and teenagers just being stupid and goofy too, Like
Hmm.
that was cute too. I just liked being able to sit with them for the little time that we had just to understand how close the relationship was.
Yeah, because it does make a lot more sense when we see her 2 years later and she is still reeling from what happened. Because if they didn't have the kind of relationship that they did, then it would not have made as much of an impact in her life going
Yeah. Even Bryce's relationship with Connor. And so Connor
forward.
has a little brother named Ethan who's going to grow up and be this supposed, sunball superstar. It's so cool just being in this time where there's like Crescent City University and there's Sunball that people watch on television and can like wear all the merch from. But anyway, so Connor is this wolf shifter, like Danica and her pack of devils, and he has the biggest crush on Bryce and wants her to give them a shot. But Bryce has this thing where she doesn't want to date any quote unquote alpha holes. She wants to be her own woman, have her own life. She doesn't want any kind of crazy, jealous, guy telling her how to live her life. And so she's been really hesitant about blurring those lines.
Part of that is because of her dad, right? So we also figure out who her dad is. And her dad is the Autumn King, the like king of the Fae in Crescent City. And the reason she never knew who her dad was until she turned like 16 or 13, 13, it was 13, was because her mom ran away from her dad when he hit her for the first time. And she happened to be pregnant with Bryce. And so she ran away and she is a human. So Bryce is half human, half Fae. So her whole life has been kind of bullied for that. And then Danica, I think, was the first person to treat her as a person and not half Fae. And she also happens to be this like incredibly powerful person. And so I think it makes Bryce feel even better that she is recognizing her. But she met her in when she went to the Oracle for the first time, which turned out very, very bad for her.
Poor
Well, I guess
Bryce.
not really bad for her. It was just a horrible experience.
I mean, it was
But
traumatizing for her, definitely,
yeah,
right?
but the Oracle, basically, like the Oracle, every Fae, when they turn 13, they go to the Oracle. The Oracle is supposed to see something about their future, right? And all the Oracle saw was well, I'm guessing light by the description is light, and she got blinded for like 3 days. And so the Oracle is mad. During this visit, Bryce learns that she has a brother or half brother, a Rune. I don't know how to
Rune.
pronounce any of these. Rune. And he is very happy to have a sister because his Oracle also did not go very well. And basically, he was told that he would be the last of the line, like the bloodline. And so when he found out he had a sister, he's like, oh, well, maybe it ends with me, but it picks back up with my sister. And so he's like keeping this a secret. But he was secretly very happy that he had a sister.
Poor Rune. Doesn't he remind you of a Prince Dorian? Like, has this
Uh-huh.
asshole father, and he's just, having fun, doing what he does, sleeping around. If he wants to smoke mirth root and be high out of his mind for a weekend, that's what he does. I mean, he has other duties too.
But he has all of this extra, like, put on him for, like, his dad keeps giving him, like, tasks. And, you're the Starborn, which is, like, a special type of Fae. He's supposed to, like, be the best of the Fae. And he's, like, right now not living up to that. And so Rune has that on his shoulders. And then also his dad keeps, like, looking down on him, like, oh, yeah, like, crown prince, blah, blah, blah. And so I feel very bad for him in that sense too, because not only does he have an asshole father, his asshole father takes it out on him that he's supposed to be better than him.
In the book, they talk about how the Starborn line, their blood, the power in their blood is just so weak now compared to what it was generations and generations ago.
hmm
So, did his magic kind of remind you of anything else? Because he
His
wields
shadows?
shadows. Uh-huh. And he has black hair.
Like, I mean, Az
Yeah.
and Lorcan.
And even Rhysand, even a little bit, right? Because he's able to like hide himself in the shadows, and they've referred to like the mind speaking, but that hasn't really confirmed whether he does that or not, like if his power is strong enough to do that. But it just talks about the power so much, and then him having that tiny kernel of light like deep down inside of him. And the most he can summon is just like lighting up his
A little
fingertip.
fingertip.
Wink. Yeah.
Yeah, I do feel bad for him. And then he and Bryce got into a fight when he was like 16. And so far, all we know about this fight is words were said. Like, words were said, and now there's grudges. Mostly on Bryce's side. Like, she is holding a severe grudge against him. And he's like, I just want my sister back because they used to be very close. Because, like I said, he was very happy to have a sister, and she didn't have anybody else. So I'm guessing she was very happy to have a brother too, and a connection to her face side that wasn't
Yeah.
her asshole of a father. From what Bryce described it as, he basically called her a half-breed slut. And so she is holding grudges. And he says he did not say that. So I'm looking forward to hearing the full story. Like, what did you say that she took as you calling her a half-breed slut? Like, you weren't good enough for my friends?
Yeah, whatever it said, you said, it was the equivalent of half-breed slut. And you can only imagine that that's how his father or their father refers to Ember, Bryce's
Mhm.
mother. And by the way, so the Autumn King, their father, did have an affair with Ember while he was married to Rune's mother, too. So the guy is just a dirtbag.
Well, and he treats her like shit, too.
Yeah, and she just takes it.
He used her to breed, basically. But it's said that Ember was so beautiful, and I don't understand how nobody's picking up on who Bryce is, because her dad has flaming hair, and she has flaming hair, and she's a half-breed. And she keeps hinting that her dad is like high up in the Fae, and Hunt, being stupid, apparently, isn't catching on that their hair is the same. Like, her father is very high up, and she even keeps like saying like, I met the king and my dad that day. It's like, all of these things are like, how are you not catching on to who her dad is?
Yeah, we're distant cousins.
And we're distant cousins, yet this dude treats her like she's like a baby and is constantly there
He's an alpha hole to her.
and is willing to put up with her shit because he knows he screwed up. And like, she is talking to him like he is like the lowest of the low. Like, how are you not figuring out that this is a brother-sister relationship, not a cousin relationship.
Well, at first they were treating it like a kind of a Targaryen relationship or,
Hmm.
Cersei and Jaime Lannister type of thing. Like, are you sleeping with your cousin? Type of
Well,
thing.
that's what Hunt was thinking. And she's like,
Hmm.
I would not touch him with a 10-foot pole. Like,
No. What did you think of his star sword? Because he carries around this very special weapon that seems to eat up or absorb the light. What does that sound like?
So we've seen a lot of magical weapons, and I think that this is one of those. Like one that was like imbued with some sort of power, which obviously is eating up the light, but I bet there's more to it.
So we just read A Court of Silver Flames, where it talked about Nesta imbuing those weapons and how I forget who was in the conversation, but they talked about one of the weapons being lost, right? It was like a
Hmm.
twin sword to Azrael's truth teller, I think, right?
Hmm.
So it's very interesting. There's so many parallels. Like even with the Autumn King having red hair, and you think about Lucian of
Hmm.
the Autumn Court
The
having
Autumn
his
Court.
red hair and the fire. There's just so many parallels. You're
Well,
like, what the heck is going on? Yeah.
and we've seen people have just a little kernel of extra magic, like with Feyre. Like she has a little kernel of everybody's magic, right? And she
Hmm.
can build that. And so that's kind of tying into Ruin's powers, where he can have a little kernel of other people's magics. I think that there's gonna be a super tie-in somewhere. And then we do see like summoning, which happened in not Game of Thrones,
Throne of Glass.
Throne of Glass. Woo. Um, with them summoning the different gods and whatever happening. And so we see a little bit of that tie into this book too, because there's hints that they weren't all on this planet to begin with. They migrated to this planet for some reason. And so we haven't heard any backstory to why some of these people migrated here, but I have a feeling there's some tie into like the world destroying that the Volg did.
All we know is there was an ancient Fey race on this planet, like Midgard or whatever it's called, 15,000 years before. And something happened where they refer to this northern rift all the
Rift.
time,
Hmm.
right? So there's just like so many little sprinkling of like that type of stuff.
And the Starborn closed that rift.
Yes. And with the fallen angels, so you brought up the fact that Bryce is treated less than because she's half human, even though this society is so advanced and you have all of these different, humanoid kind of creatures living in the same society, they do treat humans like crap. And even the angels, because didn't they kind of partner up with the rebels to try and overthrow like the
Hmm.
Asteri with their little puppet government that they put in place.
Yeah.
And that's why they've been enslaved and have to carry out their demands.
Did that give you like Twilight vibes with the like what was their like high council called that was like the evil people?
It started with a V. Was it like Volturi or something?
Volturi.
Or
Yeah.
Volturi? Okay, something like that.
So that council reminds me of that a little bit. Like they're up there like making decisions without any like care to how it affects people whatsoever.
They talk about, I think there's like 6 of them of the Asteri or something, but we
Hmm.
haven't even met any of the Asteri yet because they have what's called like the governor, the archangel, whose name is Micah. And he's the one that kind of rules the land and all of the humans and creatures and whatever that live in Crescent City.
And I'm torn on Micah because he's done some things that I'm like, I feel like you might be a good person, but you're like tied to this government politics thing. And so you can't do it out in the open. So he was the first one to say for Hunt that, like, I will give you a path to your freedom, as opposed to you're just my slave and you have no path to freedom. So I'm wanting him to turn out to be good. I'm wanting that little glimmer of like a hope to grow.
So we're told about whoever owned Hunt before, which was Sandriel, I think it was before,
Hmm.
right? And Sandriel is the twin sister of Hunt's former lover, Shehar, I think was her name. And she died in the rebellion that happened. And so you hear about Sandriel's little cobble of warriors, which do not sound like good people at all. Pollux, and I think that's one of them. And then
Mhm.
Someone called the Hind has been referred to, and there's like one more, but they're not good at all. Compared to Sandriel, Micah seems like a good guy because at least he's giving, some
A
hard
chance.
steps. Yeah. And he was also attacked. Like we learned that he was the angel that was attacked by this demon in the first part of the book that killed everybody.
Back to chapter 5. So we've met Danica. We've had like our strong feelings, happy feelings, all of these things. And then our girl goes out with two of her other friends, Fury
And Juniper.
and Juniper. And so they're like minor characters a little bit. So Juniper is a fawn and she is a ballet dancer. And then Fury is a badass assassin. So very, very much Selena vibes mixed with some Amryn vibes. I'm getting off of her, but we haven't actually seen her. We've just heard stories of her so far. And she goes out with them and she goes home and finds the whole devil's pack dead. Pack of devils. Is that what it's called?
Pack of devils. And she's
Um,
high out of her mind, too.
she's high out of her mind. Like, after the fact, they're like, I don't know how this chick is standing. She's so, like, she has so many drugs in her body. So she finds them, and then she even has like the mental capacity high out of her freaking mind on multiple things to like figure out that the thing that did this is still here. And so she goes chasing after it, and it's this demon that has been summoned, and she catches up to it, feasting on an angel, and she like high out of her mind doesn't realize that, hey, like me being a half human with like little bitty powers probably should just leave this alone since it's like devouring an angel. No, she takes after it and she like starts beating it with like this sword or something. And it
Yeah.
runs away after like clawing her. And she's not even noticing that she has been like basically her femoral artery is cut. She's dying and she is sitting here holding dude's heart in his chest, trying to keep it from bleeding out. And then this is when we meet Hunt and Isaiah. So Isaiah is the captain or commander of the 33rd, and Hunt is the Umbra Mortis. So shadow of death. I love that. Anyway,
Yes.
um, and so they come up and they try and save everybody. And Hunt, very, very medically trained over here, just staples her little leg together. And I think he was more, since we did find out that Micah, his boss and the dude who's holding his contract, and his only avenue of freedom was also bleeding to death over here, and this half-fae chick was bleeding to death, he chose to take care of like, the dude holding his like life in his hands and stapled her up and then like put her in this room and like she was being interrogated and not up for being interrogated at all. And so the Autumn King doing like, well, I don't even know if it was really the Autumn King here, but Ruin comes in all pissed off and he's like, the Autumn King says release her now. Like, now. And so she is released and she doesn't see Ruin that day, but that's Hunt's first impression. And I think maybe why he thinks that there's some love relationship in there because Ruin was slightly peeved that she was being held.
The striking thing about Bryce's personality is it's after the first part of the book, after she's survived all of this trauma and lost everyone that she cared about. She keeps everyone at arm's length, right? So she continues like pushing Rune even more away. She keeps her mother away. Like she won't even let her mother visit her or her stepdad, who is a renowned sharpshooter. Like she doesn't let anyone visit her. And she's just kind of going through the motions. Like she wants to get a better job. She knows that her situation working under Jezebel isn't ideal, but she is obviously depressed and just getting through the motions. And she is completely fine with everyone, especially Hunt, people like Hunt, just assuming that she's a stupid, vapid party girl. Because in her mind, she's like, well, I'll find out who they really are based on what they think of me,
Mhm.
And it's just, you feel so bad.
And how they treat me based off of what they think.
Yeah. And so you feel so bad for her. And I don't know, there's just so many characters that you feel bad for too, because even Hunt, like, he seems like such a very, you like gruff characters. And
Mhm.
so a part of him is so noble. He's a fallen angel. He has these beliefs still, like even after losing so much, losing the love of his life, he still feels like there's like he's still tempted by that, right? And he also feels like he is a bad guy too, because we learned that there was this guy named Philip Briggs who Danica, right before she died, had put away in prison. And everyone assumed that Philip Briggs was going to set off a big, like, terrorist bomb, essentially, and kill a bunch of people in Crescent City because he is a huge human sympathizer and wants to take down all of the current power structures and have everyone on equal footing. But he's very extremist about it and doesn't go about it in the right way. So he's essentially a bad guy. And so Hunt starts thinking of himself as that too.
He's also led that way because in order to get his freedom, he has to kill as many people as his whole unit killed during the rebellion. And so he is just told, this person's your mark and kill him. And he doesn't get a say in that. And so every time he has to kill somebody, he's like, it's another black mark on my soul. When realistically, if you don't get the say in it, like, it's not a mark on your soul, it's a mark on Micah's soul. So he is feeling very bad about himself too.
Yeah. And what kind of lights the fire under Hunt's ass is the second part of the book and the subsequent parts, the rest of the book, I'm assuming, is a little clock timer gets started. And that is the Asteri summit is coming up in a little over a month. And so Micah proposes that if you can figure out who stole Luna's horn from her temple, which was what happened, when Danica was alive 2 years before, then I will cut down all of the thousands of lives that you owe me down to 10. And then you can be free, like a freed slave. And so that is very, very enticing to Hunt. And so he's being an asshole. He's doing whatever he can to like make sure that Bryce is working on this how she is supposed to. And there's some funny scenes that come out of that, right? Because he's still thinking of Bryce as the stupid party girl getting her fucking nails done whenever she should be making a list of all of the places Danica went to and she's not doing it. You want to talk about it? Because it was kind of funny, like how it went, especially the nail parlors scene.
Yeah, so he's thinking of her as like this vapid little like sorority girl, basically. And she is actually putting her plan into motion. I forgot who the nail person was. Oh, it was okay, so we had another death 2 years later, and that was Max Tierce. I don't remember what his name was, last name, but he is a vampire. And his dad is very high up in the vampires, right? And so she is supposed to be trying to track down like why he got murdered by this demon. And so she goes to the nail salon and Hunt is like, oh my God, she's getting her fucking nails done. Like, and I'm having to stand out here in the rain watching her get her nails done. And we're not getting anywhere on this case. And so he like lights into her and she lets him believe that for a little while. And then it like comes out that there was a reason behind that because the nail artist or the like manicure artist was Max's girlfriend. And so she's like, no, they didn't know each other. And so the whole time they were talking, like as she got her nails done, she was a little bit of interrogating this lady about like Max's, whereabouts and his habits and the people he knew. And so she got to throw that in Hunt's face that she actually was coming up with clues. It just wasn't the way he wanted her to do. And next time, maybe don't underestimate me.
Didn't it kind of remind you of like Selena and just kind of the antics that she would do? Like she will always go with her own plan, not tell anyone. And she just expects you to be smart enough to keep up with her or figure it out. Right. And that's kind of how Bryce is treating Hunt. And it's so funny because she does other stuff later because Hunt is then assigned to be her bodyguard now that this demon is back on the loose again. And they're trying to figure out all this stuff and solve the mystery.
And then later her live-in bodyguard by Ruin because she's like, I'm not living with you.
Yeah. And so she finds out from the nail salon chick that he did like meet with the Viper Queen, right? Maximus. That's why he was in the meat market in the first place and got murdered there. And so the meat market apparently is a very dangerous place.
It's like the black market.
Yeah. Hunt forbids her from going. And so she just kind of sneaks out, gets on her little scooter, and he like has to figure out where she's going. And then he's like, you haven't even made the drop yet. Why are you risking your life like this, dumbass? And she's just like,
well, he didn't necessarily forbid her. He told her that like it would take like days, maybe weeks to get an audience with the queen.
Yes.
And so she's like, well, fuck that shit. I'll get an audience. And so she goes in there and she buys obsidian salt. right? Which is like the highest power salt for summoning like the bad things. And so she goes in there and she even talks this guy down
She lowballs.
using her boss's name. Like she's like, "Oh, you don't want to be turned into anything, right?" Like, that'd suck for you. And so she's like forcing him into selling this to her. And then as they step out, there's the queen, and she's like, "See, it didn't take that long." And so they had this meeting with the queen, and like they didn't find out too much, except for the queen told them to look where it hurts the most.
Yeah.
And that's where you'll find your answers. And so she figures out that she needs to be looking into what Danika was doing because she was trying to hide those like memories from herself. That's what hurts her the most. Yeah, it was a very funny ride home because she gets back on her little scooter and like even just leaving her scooter there. And he's like, "That's not going to be there when we get back." And she's like, "Well, thanks to your like great intro, like coming in, like I bet it will be here because everybody will be afraid of pissing you off by stealing my damn scooter." So it was funny. Like their relationship is just great. She's like just like needles him. And he falls for it every time.
No, if there's snarky banter and just sass, Tara is all about that and eats that shit up.
Mhm.
So the catalyst for him moving in with Bryce is the White Raven does get bombed, which is interesting because Philip Briggs he's
In
still in
jail.
jail 2 years later. And so that's what makes everyone go, "Oh shit, it wasn't him. That's why we need to find out who this
Well,
person
no,
is."
Max's murder did that
Yeah. Yeah.
because he was in jail and Max got murdered. And they're like, "Oh shit, it's not him. Who was it?"
Yeah. And this after this bombing, that's when Hunt is finally like, "Okay, I'm moving in with you." And so there's like the expected little awkward, tense kind of
You know
situations with
they have feelings
showering.
for each other.
Hmm. There was like a scene which reminded me of like she has this thing called Jelly Jubilee. And she was like taking a shower and he was like snooping around in her like closet
Looking for
looking.
soap.
What do you think he was looking for, Tara?
So he saw something shiny and purple sticking out of a box. And so before he thought about it in his own little like words in the book, he pulled this box down. He was thinking it was a vibrator. And she's like, "Why the fuck would I keep my vibrators in my hall closet? Like, they're in my bedstand." Like,
And then he's just like
why?
blushing.
Yeah. And then he like keeps checking out her bedstand. And she's like, "I know what you're thinking." Um, But so they're like these little My Little Ponies. And and so she keeps this box and he's like giving her crap. He's like, "Why do you still have those? Those are kids' toys." And basically it comes out that this was the first time that she felt included in the world because when she got that, when her mom got her the special one, then the kids at school like included her. And she's like, "That was the first time anybody was like actually nice to me." And that hit me. I'm like, "Oh, my poor little Brycey baby." And so did Hunt, I think, because he had the same kind of he was born a bastard, and so people felt the
Yes.
same way about him that he felt like that she felt, and so he is now connecting with her through their life journey. And the person that brought him out was Shahar because she didn't care, and she had this. Um, so the fallen angels, I think, get a bad rap because you think of a fallen angel as doing something bad, right? But when you hear what they actually fell for, which is to give everybody the same treatment and to not have these like aristocrats up here making all the decisions for everybody and to
Yeah.
not have like this class system that excludes people, I think that they were on the right side. So they don't want to like treat humans as slaves and those things. But Shahar died in this. And so his one person that he felt like cared about him is more than just what he does with his powers.
All they did at the end of the day was defy an order, right? They used their own
Hmm.
brain and looked at their own moral code to decide what they thought was right and wrong and defied that order. And that's all it was. So it does make you have a lot of doubt in this society. And there's just a lot of sinister things going on that you get
Hmm.
the sense of.
Yeah.
And there are other creatures in this world too. So, like at the murder scenes, because that douchebag Maximus Tertian, the vampire, I don't know how they say in this book, but anyway, he was an asshole, deserved to die, but
Mhm.
Bryce shouldn't get blamed for his death. But anyways, because she's treated kind of like a, you know, what is the word?
A suspect.
Yeah, she is treated as a suspect.
I think there is some, like, she isn't responsible for their deaths, but I think there is some link back to her because every single one of the deaths has had a tie to her. And I sent Sandra this text. I'm like, ooh, I think I figured it out.
This was a very astute observation, by the way.
So I figured this out after the Oracle because the Oracle was blind and her brother has this itty bitty tiny power of starborn power, right? Which to me, I think a star as like the sun, very blinding, right? And so like Danica obviously had contact with her. It was her apartment that they all died in, right? Max had just made inappropriate like
Passes. Yeah.
contact with her, like grabbing her, and to the point that she was like, no, leave me the hell alone. And then they had just visited the alkalite, like the temple, and they had walked past this alkalite on their way in that ends up dead. And then the next one was a guard at the temple. And so I think that the monster is trying to track her or some connection to her.
Yeah. The thing about that guard, though, was he was also on duty 2 years before the night all of the cameras mysteriously went down. And so, one of the interesting things that Bryce and her little posse come up with is Prince Rune has two friends named Declan and Flynn, right? And Declan is like the hacker, that genius guy. And so they have him, okay, just go into the camera stuff and try and figure out what's going on. And he does figure out what's going on because he overhears something, which is like, oh, like titties, ha 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 ha. And it's like, oh my God, it's just a bunch of stupid kids making wishes at that gate again. And so they figure out that the site where all of these sightings or murders are happening happen to be upon like main avenues where ley lines go. But then they figure out even more than that, which is what? It's like our favorite thing ever in Sarah J Maas books.
Well, I'm going to get to that, I promise. But they also figure out the footage based off of like the fact that these kids were laughing about like making their wishes and whatever. They figure out that the footage had been swapped and that had been swapped by Sabine. And so now they're hardcore on Sabine's trail, thinking that she is the one, because she also made comments after Danica died that Danica got herself into something she should have shut up about, and that bitch in there should be dead, and stuff like that. So she made some very questionable statements after her daughter died. And so, but the thing that Sandra was saying is they figured out that whoever is summoning this thing is summoning it in the sewer, which is gross. But if you remember Throne of Glass series, there was a lot of sewer death
and
or
grossness.
just grossness. And much like Selena did, Bryce went and took a very, very long shower, which is where our boy found her vibrators, so he thought. And a box full of them at that. Like, how many do you think she needs?
One for every day of the week, I guess.
Different kinds? I don't know.
That was a fun part. I used to be obsessed with My Little Pony and Grand Champions and Dapple horses, all that shit growing up. And
I really loved the scene with Declan and Flynn at the shooting range. Because she is throwing out barbs to them. And then this is also where you got a little bit more hint into what her brother's problem with her was when she was 16 and their fight, because he basically says that he told her to stay away from his friends because she had a little crush on Flynn. And by little, I mean she wrote Mrs. Bryce Flynn on her notebooks for 2 years, which she tells Hunt about because Hunt is getting slightly jealous of Flynn. And he's like, did you ever do anything with Flynn? And she's like, are you going to tell me about everybody you ever hooked up with? And he's like, well, no. She's like, well, then stay out of my business. But then she did go in to tell him that she had a slight crush on Flynn. And then that is what started her fight with her cousin. is because he told her to stay away from his friends. And she got out of that fight that she is a half-breed slut that wasn't good enough for his friends. And so, yeah. And so you see Flynn flirting with her hardcore. It is hilarious and it pisses off Ruin to no end. And she flirts back a little bit, but in like a snipey way. And then they all bet her that she can't do as good of them in shooting. And she does. She shoots 3 shots through the same hole. And she looks at Hunt, and there's this moment where she's like, I know he's going to like now be.
His masculinity is threatened. Yeah.
Yes. Emasculated. That's the word I was looking for there. And he just looks at her, gets the gun, and shoots a shot right through it. And she's like, oh, okay. But then he mentions he will always be in love with Shahar. And she's like, oh, okay. Bucket of cold water right there.
Yeah. What do you think of this whole little love dynamic going on?
I like them together. I think that they're both bringing out the best in each other. Like she is bringing out in him his humanity that I think he lost when like 200 years ago when they did the rebellion and through all the torture and things that he's lived through. And I think he is bringing her back to life after all the things she's lived through. And so I think they're good together. I hate how tied he is to Shahar still, though. Like I hate it because I foresee some issues in their relationship. And I don't want there to be issues.
Even his memory, I think it talks about his memory of the day that Shahar died because Sandriel killed her. They were on opposing sides of the war. And how Sarah J Maas wrote that entire memory of Shahar falling through the sky. And, you know, she's an angel too. And she has Sandriel's sword through her sternum. And so Sandriel is like flying down with her. It's just like even that imagery, it's just such like epic.
And they're both leaking blood. Basically.
Tragic. Yeah. Just a stream of like blood wings. Like, oh, so sad.
Like this reminded me of Lorcan a little bit. Like not that scene, but like the tie that he still has to her. And of course, from what we know right now, she is much better than Maeve. But it is still this tie that's like, I think going to come in between them, much like Maeve did for Elite and Lorcan. I'm hopeful that it won't stay. Like, I'm hopeful that they can get past it, but it's still like one of those things. So I'm like, I hate that you're so tied to her still because there's no way to untie him. She's dead. But on a happier note, we see Hunt's jealousy coming out a little bit more when we meet another race of magic people, which are the mer people, right? And Therian is the
you
person that
texted
we
me.
meet. And
you're like, oh, I like Therian. I'm like, of course you do. He's a swaggering male. He's an Adian. He calls her legs.
Like yes. And so he is this mer person, which Hunt is friends with.
Contact. Professional contact. Yeah.
And so he asks him if there's been anything like basically washing out of the sewers that shouldn't be. Because this is after they figure out that they're summoning this thing in the sewers. And like, maybe there's other bodies and things that are tied to this that we can use as evidence. And so he's asking Therian if there's anything weird going on. And Therian's like, is there something I should know? And so they kind of fill him in a little bit so that he can warn his people. And yes, he is hardcore hitting on Bryce. And it is hilarious that he uses like the oldest pickup in the book, which is basically, so what does your boyfriend think of you working with him? And Hunt's like,
Hunt's just staring at him like, really, dude? Did you just say that?
He's like, so clever.
So clever. Smooth. Yeah.
And she's like, I don't have a boyfriend.
She's just playing right along. I just love her.
And she's like, do you want the job? And I'm like, I love you. I love this. And Hunt is just like seething behind her.
There was also like a quick mention of the little otter too. The little otter mail messenger with this like little vest on.
Like I would totally be with her because I would be like, I want to pet the otter. And she mentions that was the reason she came to this city is because of that. She saw it one time as a kid and she's like, I love it. And Therian's like, I'll send one your way. I love you. Send me an otter.
A real Romeo, that one. It's such a heavy book because you have a horrible, just multiple homicide. And it's not even just like their body's dead. I mean, they are literally
Like
fleshy
pulp
pulps,
is what it's
piles,
called.
piles of body parts and pieces.
And that's basically where we leave off, is meeting Therian and the vibrators, right? Like
Yeah.
that's going to be our like thing for this episode. Therian and the vibrators.
Therion and the vibrators. Yeah. But you got a little bit of backstory about Therion too, because his sister was murdered
Sister
by
died.
like a panther shifter or something several years before. So that's how Hunt was acquainted with him and then just became like a contact, because apparently the Fae and the creatures of the many waters, like the Blue Court realm, are very mysterious. They are reclusive, they keep to themselves down in the depths of the water. And that's something that hasn't ever really been explored in Sarah J Maas books before, are like the people down deep. Like the Silver Flames, you had that ancient Kelpie creature that was hanging out in the
Mhm.
bog of Orin or Orid. And it was just kind of creepy and stuff.
You also had Throne of Glass having like the sea dragons.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And this one, it mentioned that the River Queen was the daughter of a god, which we did see in Throne of Glass, a daughter of a god.
Yes. And the part about Hunt's name being Orion,
Mhm.
and like he had a good relationship with his mom. She's not alive anymore. She like passed or something, but like it doesn't really talk about who his father is either, right? But he's the only angel with this crazy power, like lightning power.
Midnight power.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I think the part where Hunt started like really to see Bryce different is she threw herself over Juniper during that bombing. And
Yeah.
he's like, you haven't made the drop. She has. She would have survived this either way. And Bryce is like, yes, but she is a dancer. And this is like an important year for her. If she misses parts of it, she won't ever get the career back.
Mm-hmm.
And so she put her life on the line so that Juniper could continue her career. Because that night was the night he also figured out that she wasn't drinking anymore because she was downing water. And he's like, maybe you should slow down. And he took it and he's like, this isn't vodka. And she's like, no shit, Sherlock. I figured that out.
And when he ordered her a bunch of food and stuff too to make her eat, because she just doesn't really eat. She's depressed, And there was like a sad part because, with the 2 years that have been passed, the friendship between Fury and Juniper and Bryce is not the same at all. They pretty much just kind of all went their separate ways and handled it differently. And Juniper kind of talks about it too. So it's just, you get all of this sadness coming out.
Mhm.
And even Lehabah kind of calls Bryce out on that. Like, you're a shell of a person. You don't like
Mhm.
live anymore. And that always kind of presses Bryce's buttons a bit because, I mean, who likes to hear hard truths about themselves, right? Like, you already know that you need to change something in order to feel better about it. But it's just like, you just don't want to. Like, you
Mhm.
don't want to face it yet, And you feel bad for Bryce.
But it's looking up because Hunt is bringing her out.
But he has his own shit too. And it's like
Yeah.
they both
I think
are
that they're
just
both like making each other better. Like she's making him realize that some of the things he has to do. Also, like this is just a theory on my part, but like since she saved Micah's life, wouldn't Micah owe her?
you would think, right?
He doesn't want her to know that it was him. And like because Hunt's like, don't tell him I told you.
Yeah.
So because Hunt hopefully will find out who's killing these people. And so Hunt's contract will be down to 10 people. I'm hoping that like maybe she can like use her like bargain with Micah for saving his life to free Hunt all the way to where he gets this little C thing, which is very Roman because like that's what they did. The
Uh-huh.
SPQM or whatever, that's a
Yep.
Roman thing. So yeah, I'm hoping that we'll see something come of the fact that she saved Micah.
Yeah, you would think. He's just a hard one to read, right? I don't know. Like, he'll seem like a good guy and then he'll just kind of
Do
power
something
trip.
else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To like put Hunt in his place or something, even kind of asking
Yeah.
Bryce out. And she was just like, nah,
Not interested.
like embarrassing him publicly.
And Hunt's like, oh, I'm going to hear about that later.
Yeah. It ain't good.
I'm hoping that there will be something come out of that.
Any favorite quotes so far in the first half of House of Earth and Blood.
I really like the Lele and Bryce when she's like, that size difference isn't gonna work.
They're so funny.
Um,
I do love the Danika Oracle phrase one that's like on the back of Danika's jacket that Bryce wears and tattooed.
Bryce's tattoo.
Yeah, but it's a different language, right? Like
Yeah,
through love.
it says like all is possible or something like
Yeah.
that. Which is to Bryce's like point, like that doesn't seem like a Danika phrase, because the Danika wouldn't even tell Bryce that she loved her. And Bryce like, I love you. And so it took them almost dying.
What did you make of that memory?
There's something else to that one too, because we've only seen like very, very quick glimpses like of them on the ground and guns being held to their heads and stuff. And so there's something else to that too.
Yeah, Hunt saw that picture in the guest room of like Danika and Bryce post that event, whatever, like kind of sitting overlooking the canyon.
But that also ties back to the fact that Bryce pulled the love out of her, basically. And I'm wondering if, I don't know, like her mom said that bitch was supposed to die. And I'm wondering if that love that Danika had, which is through love, all things are possible, is what made Bryce be alive now. And then all things are possible, like through Bryce, because I think Bryce is going to be something all powerful, even though she says she only has a little bit of power. Like there's more power running through her veins than she knows of right now.
Yeah.
Like something's holding her back. I don't know what it is. So that's what I took that quote as.
You brought up what people are, and we've talked about different creatures and stuff here. We haven't even really talked about the witches. And so I'm wearing my Manon and the 13 t-shirt, but like there are med witches and just witches in general, like in this world of Midgard.
Which Ruin met one and Ruin's crushed. And
the one that was at the crime scene, right?
Uh-huh. I love it. I love Ruin crushing.
We didn't even talk about Rune has an arranged marriage now, too, right?
I don't know if he has an arranged marriage. Like, I don't think it's fully set up, because he's like flat out, no, not happening.
His father was like basically hinting that shit was getting real in the other part of the world, like Pangea or something, and the war was coming, so they needed to make alliances. And so your ass is probably going to get married
to the witch queen, the new witch queen.
And so Rune is just like,
and he's like, no, I'd rather marry this witch.
This hot doctor.
Yes. I think it's funny how he's crushing, because like they're all swaggering, like they're not short on women, right? But when they actually have a crush on a woman, they all fall to pieces, and it's hilarious.
So a thought that I just had is they haven't really talked about mates or any of that kind of context, have they? I'm like, that's weird that they haven't talked about that. It's always like one of the first things that get talked about in like a Sarah J Maas series, I feel like.
I know. But, well, yeah, but it took a while for them to talk about it with Selena, too.
True.
Yeah, she didn't meet her Fae side for a while. So, but like, I mean, we're in a Fae in magical kingdom, so you would have thought if there were those things that they would be mentioned. But yes.
Since we're reading Crescent City, when you think back to the Throne of Glass series, the last book, Kingdom of Ash, chapter 99, Aelin falling through worlds. There's the one world where she saw the winged Fae male and a pregnant Fae female that kind of helped slow her down when she was falling through their world. And then she passed through a world that was like tall towers set on the curve of a river. And you're like, that's Crescent City, because the Istros River is the crescent, right?
A crescent, yeah.
It's like everything coming like full circle with Sarah J Maas' series. With our original, our OG girl, Aelin. I miss her.
I can't wait for some more tie-ins. Like, I'm waiting. Not patiently, but I am waiting.
Well, I feel like there's just like breadcrumbs left and right with like, okay, Starborn power, weird magical weapons, and all this stuff.
But if we know Sarah J Maas, these are all important.
It's like eye color, bloodlines. Yeah. Any theories for the last half of the book? Like any predictions or just things you want to see?
I hope we see what freaking Bryce is, because I'm not a patient waiter. So like
I
I want to know this.
feel like Tara's going to try and figure this out.
I want to see Hunt free so that they can like get together unencumbered as much as possible, because one of the two things she said like is kind of stopping her is A, his tie to Shahar, and then B, he is owned by Micah. He's not able to be his own person. And so I'm hoping one of those at least gets.
Yeah. Speaking of being owned, like Lehabah is owned, like she's a slave. And do you remember when she asked Bryce to like buy her too?
And Bryce is like, I can't.
Like, Bryce is the type that would, in a heartbeat, do anything to help another.
The same for like Hunt. Like I feel like in her brain she's trying to figure out a way to free him, which is why I hope that it's going to come up that like Micah owes her. Like I hope that
Yeah.
there's like some like blood debt or something like that that she can call in because she saved him.
Yeah.
Because yeah, she could call it in for both of them, like the money and the freedom, because it's 10 deaths. Also, like from everything I've seen of Fury and like the fan arts, like Sandra is Fury. Like short hair, little Asian.
Like the way she's described it is another one that was kind of like Amryn, right?
Uh-huh.
But it was cool because Hunt recognized Fury's name because of the things that she does overseas. Like he won't even go like touch that.
And she is now on her way over here. And he's like, oh, great. All we need to do is add Fury at Axatar, something like that. So
All their names, I'm just like, I have no idea.
yeah. But I hope we get some answers to these questions. I hope I don't have to wait until the second book for some answers. Do I? Because I have seen a TikTok of somebody like halfway through the second book and they did not give anything away, but apparently something happens in the second book that is like stupidly important.
When we get to House of Sky and Breath, I cannot fucking wait for us to get to that book because it just explains so much of my excitement. And it's been the most impossible task. Like, I'm so happy that you, my bestie, are reading all of these fucking dense, like, doorstopper books with me, because then I feel like I will get some of my sanity back being able to talk about this. Like, so we will get to talk about it, but we will
this one
finish the
was
first half of this book.
400 freaking pages
Yeah.
that I read in like a week.
Love you.
After that chapter 5 shit though, I was like, I don't know about these anymore, Sandra.
I know you actually said you hate me, so that kind of hurt, but I get it.
Well, okay, so Sandra texted me like that she can't wait for me to get to chapter 5. And I, thinking that this is like a chapter 55 in Athalar or whatever, am really looking forward to this. And then everybody dies. And so, yes, I, in that moment, told Sandra I hated her because I was looking forward to some sexy time between Connor. And instead, I get pulp.
Sorry. A lot of apologizing from me to you through this whole journey. It's all love. It's no, we shared, bonding. Oh, one last thing that we haven't talked about yet that's kind of important is this whole thing that's kicked off this is Luna's horn being stolen. And they talk about Luna's horn being broken. And so now they're saying, no, it can be fixed, because the whole thing was, oh, no, it can't be fixed because the Fae that were powerful enough to fix it are like no longer here. Like no one is strong enough to do it.
And the thing was, it has to be fixed by a light that is not a light and a magic that is not magic. And I sent you a text about this because I think that this is Bryce, because she's a light that is not a light, which I figured out after the Oracle, right? Like there's something light in her, but she's not. And she's magic, but she's not, because she's magic on her face side, but she's not magic on her human side. So I think Bryce can fix it, which is why the dude's tracking her.
Have we been told what the implications of fixing the horn is, like what it does?
It can reopen the Northern Rift because it's both an opener and a closer. It's like a garage door opener of the Northern Rift.
Isn't that what the Autumn King was asking Rune about too? Like with
Is the
trying to
horn?
locate the horn? Because all of this weird
Yes.
research he's doing in his study, right? Like he's very into the
And then
planetary
he's like trying
systems.
to get him to use his magic. And he's like, that's all you got?
That was it. Yeah, we will see. So we have 40 something more chapters to read, and then we will finish with
Woohoo!
House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J Maas, and then we'll jump right into House of Sky and Breath. Again, that one is going to be split into 2 episodes covering first, second half, and then right in time for House of Flame and Shadow, which releases on January 30th. And I'm losing my damn mind because I need this book. Like, as soon as it's released on Kindle at midnight, Monday night, I am reading it, Tara. Like, I'm just going to start reading it because we've been waiting for like years to figure out what happens, and it is time. So I cannot wait.
And Sandra did schedule these right so that I don't have to wait these years to get this book. Although I'm sure there's a 4th book too.
Yes.
Or is this just a trilogy?
I don't know, because there's House of Many Waters too.
Oh.
That's the 4th and final house like in this world.
These houses, like they give me very Akatar vibes because we had the House of Wind and
Yes. Even like some of the way the courts are described with like night court, specifically like the daytime court, because there's like dawn, day, but there's night court, but there's not like a dusk court at all in Akatar, right?
Yeah. No.
I feel like there was something weird about that in the series, but I'd have to go back and check. But yeah, so we'll see. So we hope you enjoyed Tara and my very casual, chaotic banter covering all the things for House of Earth and Blood. And we will see you back next week to cover part 2. So till then, bye.
Bye.